everybody. Second Meeting Angela here. Welcome to Wrestling with the Future. We have got a very special show for you tonight. This is Boys Night. Mike and Mikey are joining me, and we're going to talk about the state of wrestling. And we're going to discuss some upcoming guests, and I think you'll enjoy it. I'd like you to get to know Mike and Mikey a little bit, and this is their opportunity to shine. So, gentlemen, put your smiles on. That means you too, Messier.
Hey, I tried to. I tried.
So how you guys doing tonight? I should tell people before you guys answer. Jason Knight from ECW was supposed to be with us, but I guess Jason didn't realize he had prior commitments, and Jason bailed on us tonight. So that's all good, and it's okay, and we forgive Jason, and that's all right. So now, back to the question at hand. How you guys doing?
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm good. Everything's good.
Now, Mike, are you Mad Mike? Are you Killer Kelleher or Mad Dog Kelleher?
I'm Killer Kelleher.
There you go. Okay. You picked, I gave him a choice. He had to pick his own handle. All right. We got Mike Killer Kelleher.
Had a nice ring to it.
And Mike the Moviemaker Messier.
Good to be here, Angelo. Good to be here, Mike.
Also known as the Angry Wrestling Fan. Now, let's talk about that for a second. You know, you came to fame, or prominence, I should say, with your angry wrestling rants.
Yes.
Largely heard on YouTube, and thanks to Vince Russo, you got a little bit of a FaceTime with it, and people know who you are now.
Yeah.
We're honored to have you as part of our family here.
I'm happy to be here.
So tell me, where did the angry wrestling rant emanate from? Where did that start, Micah? You and I never really talked about that.
I can give you the origin story. I was, in Facebook for years. I had my own pro wrestling Facebook group called Pro Wrestling, which was going along pretty well. And then it kind of became a site where people, or a Facebook group where people were doing a little too much advertising for my taste. And it was hard to decipher what's advertising and what's news. Then I started another group that was kind of like the insider group called the Foreign Object. Then eventually I started branching out to other groups. One of them was called the Cult of Kayfabe, where the guys in the Cult of Kayfabe group, and they have kind of a nice logo that's the K-O reverse K. They were debating. Braun Strowman had just put the Big Show through the cage on a Monday Night Raw. So this is about 2017, I want to say. And people were kind of debating, well, does that mean the Big Show's retired? And did the Big Show ever live up to his potential? And I jumped in, right. I jumped in on just what you said, Angelo. No, he didn't. And I said, this guy came into WWF, I believe, in February of 1999. His first incident was helping Vince McMahon, but they lost. Vince lost this cage match to Stone Cold on St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Yeah. The next night on Monday Night Raw, Stone Cold gave the Big Show, or who was called Big Nasty at the time, gave him a stunner and pinned him 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring. And I said, I think that epitomizes the Big Show's WWF run. He's had, I think, two.
That was it.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah. He's had two runs with the title. They've both been fairly unspectacular. And every time they need a guy to get thrown around by somebody else who's big, Brock Lesnar, Drew McIntyre, Braun Strowman, he's the sacrificial lamb. But my point, I just felt that I felt so enraged, Angelo, about the Big Show that I felt like, hey, I was late to the game with smartphones, and I was just learning that the smartphone had the capability to take video, and I could upload that to YouTube. So instead of just responding in a comment, I cut a video for the guys in Cult of Kayfabe, and then I put it on the thread. And a bunch of them watched it, and none of them really liked it. And then the next thing you know, I was doing another video defending the first video. And then I kind of said, I kind of enjoy this. Like, I kind of like ranting about wrestling in front of the camera. And I was doing.
Let's be honest too, Mike. You're a bit of a ham.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And eggs. And I get to the point where I was doing so many of these wrestling rants, And the thing that was really the trigger finger of taking it to the next level was the Saudi Arabian shows, the WWE Saudi Arabian shows.
Yeah.
And the initial controversy was was how come they're succumbing to these Shari laws about no women on the shows, no Sami Zayn because of where he was born. Yeah. Aleister Black wasn't welcome because of his female goddess tattoo. I took a lot of issue with all that stuff.
Sure.
And just as a interesting coincidence, I happened to be on Twitter one night, and Vince Russo, his brand group had like an open call night, and it just said something like, dial this number if you want to hear the show or be a part of the show. And I just thought I was going to be asking him a question. I didn't realize that I'd be part of the podcast team for the night because Vito LaGrassa took the night off, was in the middle of something, and so Vince needed a co-host. So I think it was me, Bin Hameen, Cole Sharf, and a couple other guys.
Sure.
And that's when the promo of me, going off about the WWE's doing Saudi Arabian business, that's what kind of took it to the next level. And here I am with you, and it's been a fun ride. Yeah.
Terrific. Well, we're honored and happy to have you here.
Good to be
Mike
here, buddy.
Kelleher, Killer Kelleher. How do you come to the world of wrestling? Who brought you into this crazy mix?
Probably Jeff the Ref. Jeff and I we grew up together, and he and I used to watch wrestling and recreate matches and interview each other, and those are probably my earliest memories of wrestling.
And now, before the Ref introduced, did you have any interest in wrestling before that, or did you know that even this world even existed?
Barely. This was probably like 84, 85, something like that. Mm-hmm. So like Hulkamania was definitely running wild. Macho Man, all the big WWF stars were just hot.
Now you had to be a kid in 84, 85. Well, you're maybe like 8, 9 years old, 10 maybe?
7, 8.
7. Yeah. Oh, you were really like a little kid.
Yeah, me and Jeff played soccer together. And so...
Brother, you're making me feel really damn old right now, okay?
Well, I mean, you are, so...
Jeez.
Go fuck yourself.
That's stiff.
For as much guff as I take from you, Angelo, I think that's just fair to give you a little back. But that's where my wrestling story began, was with Jeff the Ref.
No kidding. Now, you watch the product now because being a part of this team, you have to kind of to keep up with things.
Well, I've been watching wrestling.
I should tell people that you are the host of the Refs Roundtable. So, and you and I both know what that is, but if people are just watching this for the first time, and we have, new listeners and viewers every week, thankfully. So tell them what the Refs Roundtable is.
The Refs Roundtable is a discussion of the week's wrestling news and events. A lot like what this show is going to be tonight. We just we had a big WrestleMania Pick'em episode before WrestleMania called The Road to Refamania, and we're recording an episode this week where we review Refamania, and then talk about little happenings of the week, and then get ready for next week.
Now, will you be covering all the pay-per-views that are slated to come up, or are you going to pick and? Okay, you're going to do them all. Well, I was going to ask you if you were going to pick and choose which ones you decided to do, but I think in fairness, though, if you're going to do all of them, that's great.
I'll say this: I will do most of them. There'll be some NXTs that I probably can't do. Just for time's sake, but I will say most of the flagship WWE pay-per-views I will do. AEW, I will definitely give it an effort, and then we'll see about NXT.
And in addition to doing this podcast, you also, I should tell people, can be seen coast to coast all across the country on a television show. We're going to plug him because he's going to come on the show. You do a show called Legacy List with Matt Paxson. Tell everybody about the show and who Matt Paxton is and how you got involved with Legacy List.
Well, the show Legacy List with Matt Paxton is a real positive television show, which is something that's really lacking on TV these days. But the whole premise of the show is we're helping families through transition. So it could be maybe the parents are empty nesters and the kids have moved out and they need to downsize, or somebody's dealing with an estate. We come in and we find the items that are most important for the family and help tell their story through those items. And that's the whole thing. And so Matt Paxton, a lot of people know Matt Paxton from the show Hoarders. He was on A&E for the better part of 10 years.
Yeah.
And, he and I have been in the worst houses in America. And I'll just tell you, it's a whole new world.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
But I do want to say Legacy List is not about hoarding. It's about families and their stories.
Yeah. Yeah, and for the record, my wife and sister-in-law are huge Matt Paxton fans, and they're looking forward to his appearance on the show. Now, Mike, the Moviemaker Messier, is appropriately called the Moviemaker because you actually make films.
Yeah.
You do movies, like real movies that people can go see.
Yeah.
And I think the one that really propelled you to prominence there, if we can talk for a minute about it, is a film that's a personal favorite of mine called Disregard the Vampire.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you, Angela.
Great film. Tell everybody how you got involved in making movies. Is something that you wanted to do for a long time? Was it a dream of yours, Mike?
Hey, that's a great question. And, it goes back to high school. I went to a high school. I wasn't a great student, but I happened to have a semester in my senior year of high school where there was a class called TV production that was being offered as an elective. And I signed on for it, and we did a little bit of everything. We had this instructor named Mr. Harvey, who liked to give everybody a hard time. He was a fun guy, but he liked to joke around. And he would teach us about Segway operating, and we even got to do a little bit of acting, and we had a good time. And in that class, I wrote a script called World War III Part 2, which was a comedy. And
it's great. It really is.
All the different characters would come into the movie by rapping, because rapping was the new thing at the time. So I had Saddam Hussein and George Bush Jr. rapping, and
so you were ahead of Hamilton.
Yeah.
Way.
Well, that's one thing, Mike. I'll tell you. You guys know this as creative people. There is something called the collective unconscious, where you might have a great idea for a movie, and it just kind of goes in your brain and slips out, and then 5 years later, you're in a movie theater and you see that movie on screen or something very close to it. Even The Matrix. When I saw The Matrix for the first time, one of the first short stories I wrote in high school was very similar to some of the themes of The Matrix. So that happens quite a bit. Going back to Angela's question, in college, I did a movie called Man and You, a Providence love story. And probably the biggest things I've done that people can see, I had a fight scene with Wesley Snipes, and I played Sybil Shepherd's son in a movie called Hard Luck that Mario Van Peebles directed. Mario directed New Jack City, so people can find Hard Luck. And then a movie called Hope Springs with Meryl Streep. I had a scene with Meryl Streep and Elizabeth Shue. As far as my own filmmaking, Disregard the Vampire, Mike Messier documentary, is probably my tour de force as far as really being honest about the frailties, the vulnerabilities, the obstacles, the struggles of the filmmaker. And the vampire becomes a metaphor for this time-consuming, effort-consuming, money-consuming vocation of filmmaking. So when people hear Disregard the Vampire, they may not know what they're in for, but I think it's a story that anybody that's ever had a dream and pursued it can relate to, whether that's making a film or making a small business or a relationship that wasn't meant to be.
Right.
If you watch this movie on YouTube or Vimeo, I think you'll relate to it. So I think thanks, Angelo, for checking that out.
Yeah, it's a great picture. And then, of course, you've discussed it on the show before, your love for wrestling. You've been a lifelong wrestling fan and followed the product since you were a kid.
Yeah.
I think that's we all get started when we were kids. I everybody knows my story. I got started with this crazy stuff when I was like 6.
Yeah.
And the first time I ever saw, I'll never forget it. They say you never forget your first time. I'll never forget it. Was Bruno Sammartino versus Gorilla Monsoon.
Wow.
Yeah. 1966. A long time ago. On back then it was called UHF TV.
Yeah.
You had this crazy looking antenna that was like around, and you had to play with it.
The crank dial.
Mike, yeah, right, Mike. Remember them?
Yeah, the crank dial.
My first match was Bruno and Gorilla Monsoon way back when, and that first match I was hooked. That was it.
And Bruno won.
And I've been involved ever since.
Angela, did Bruno win?
Say again, Mike.
Did Bruno win?
Of course.
I'm assuming he won. I'm just double checking.
He's the champ. Of course, the champ always wins.
I didn't know he was the champ. That one,
Bruno was the champ from '63.
Yes.
Now, Mike Messier, I need your help on this.
For a year.
Yeah.
63
to 71.
To 71.
Then he lost it to Ivan Koloff at 71 in MSG. Ivan lost it 2.5 months later to Pedro Morales.
Right.
But Pedro had it for about 2.5 years. Pedro actually defended against Bruno in Shea Stadium, a 71-minute curfew draw. And then Pedro lost it to Stan the Man Stasiak, who only had the title for 9 days and lost it back to Bruno. And so Bruno had the title for another, I think, about 4.5 years.
Yeah,
and he lost it. Right, he lost it in, I believe, 77 to Superstar Billy Graham in Baltimore,
Maryland,
where I've been to see many wrestling shows. Not that one, but I've been to many shows.
The night that shook Baltimore.
And Superstar had his feet on the ropes. And the irony being that 10 months later, when Superstar lost the title to Bob Backlund, he had his foot on the rope, which should have necessitated a break. So that was kind of this poetic thing of Superstar Billy Graham's title run.
Yeah, absolutely. And that didn't go unnoticed on me, by the way. So now let's talk about the current product. Well, a lot has changed in wrestling since the days of Pedro and Superstar.
Right.
Of course, Mike Messier, kind of my resident historian here, will bring we'll tie everything together. But Mike Kelleher, Killer Kelleher. Now you started in the '80s with Hulkamania.
Oh yeah.
When you were a fan, being indoctrinated by Jeff the Ref, and let's be honest about it, if you were around Jeff the Ref for 5 minutes, you became a wrestling fan. You just couldn't help it.
Yeah.
And so
he would say, I'll tell you what, he would say, hey, let's go outside and play soccer. Come over and we'll go play soccer, or we'll go do this. But whatever we had planned to do instantly changed when I got there to, hey, let's watch wrestling.
Wrestling, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly where I was going with it. So you grew up watching Hulk and Ultimate Warrior,
Sting, like the
oh
early
my God!
Sting.
Now, you watched. You grew up in that. What was that? Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, like we used to get on
with,
TV
like
after
Sting
school.
and the Crockett era.
Yeah, I mean we got AWA, we got NWA.
Oh wow!
And we got WWF.
Wow, you got all of it.
Yeah.
In the '80s.
Yeah.
Shit.
What city were you in, Mike?
Virginia Beach, Norfolk.
Okay.
Virginia.
Yeah.
And you got Vern Gagne?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we used to get NWA, and then when it kind of transitioned over to WCW,
wow.
We got all that. And I just remember, you know what? I keep this memory of watching those AWA matches growing up was really odd, because it wasn't like the WWF production at all.
Well, did you notice when you were watching AWA more of a traditional wrestling style as opposed to like show busy glitz?
Looking at it as not the 7 or 8 or 9-year-old, yes. Looking at it as an adult or somebody with perspective, yes. And I just remember those poor jobbers that were put in the ring with, these bruisers, and they would just get absolutely destroyed.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, they had some big guys, Yeah, Mike Messier, they had some big guys at Vern's territory. One-man gang, Dick the Bruiser, the Crusher.
Yeah. The Road Warriors were there. The Road Warriors were there in 84 and 85.
Road Warriors.
And
Scott Hall.
Yeah. Crusher Blackwell. Bruiser Brody.
That nobody talks about anymore. Crusher Jerry Blackwell.
Angelo, I got to tell you, I've been watching some old school wrestling on YouTube, and I discovered Central States Wrestling from about 1984. And they've got Ric Flair tag teaming with Crusher Blackwell against Ken Patera and Dory Funk Jr. That was
great wrestling. Central States was great wrestling.
Yeah, it was
and
a lot
it's
of fun.
A shame, Messier, it's a shame that all of that history is lost on people. I had a guy, in fact, Mike, you were my co-host the night Sal Correnti was coming on.
Yes, the Bruno Sammartino.
And with Bruno. Mm-hmm. And I spoke to Sal today, and it's funny because Sal asked me, why do I do this if it's not for the money? And the answer I gave him was just what you and I were speaking about, you and I and Mike. And I said to him, I do this to preserve the history. Mm. Because if it were not for people like us to preserve the history, the young kids watching the stuff today, all they would know as history is NXT, AEW, WWE, and that's all they would know.
Yeah, and it's one thing that I remember from WWF programming and even WCW, but I remember specifically in WWF, they made it a point in the 80s and early 90s to reference stuff that happened in the decades prior.
Thank you.
But
exactly,
they don't do that anymore.
No, Mike, they don't. Mike Messier, what's missing from that scenario?
Well, hey guys, I'll take an alternate point of view if I could, to segue into something that just happened, which is getting a little bit of traction and controversy, which is this John Cena Bray Wyatt match at WrestleMania that was pre-taped. It was called the Firefly Funhouse.
Yep.
And it turned into like a French art film, which a lot of people did not appreciate, Jim Cornette especially, but I actually did appreciate it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Corny didn't like it.
No.
Well, we should point out, though, all of us should make a concerted effort to point out that Jim Cornette, God bless him, and that's ironic in and of itself. If you know Jim Cornette, he's an atheist. Right. And doesn't believe in God, but God bless him. Jim Cornette is a wrestling purist, and I respect the hell out of him for that. However, you've got to be willing to at least open up your eyes a little bit to the possibility that wrestling is not only sport or entertainment, but also, let's be clear about it, Mike Messier, it is an art form. And it's like film. Vince McMahon himself said in the film Beyond the Mat, he said, we make movies.
We make movies, pal.
We make movies, pal. Yeah, we make movies, pal. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely right, Mike. And that's kind of ties in to what you do. There were two matches that people dumped on big time. Of course, the AJ Undertaker match, which had a cinematic feel.
The Bonesaw match.
Yeah.
Boneyard.
And I never in my life before or since heard of a Boneyard match. That one, and of course the heretofore mentioned John Cena Bray Wyatt match, which was cinematic. Let's be honest about it. Let's call it what it is. It was a cinematic piece. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that if it does two things. Actually, three things. Number one, and most important, it tells a story. Number one. Number two, it grabs the attention of the viewer. And number three, gets someone over. And that's why you even have a match, to get someone over. You have to.
Right.
That's it. Somebody has to win. Somebody has to lose. Somebody's got to go over. Somebody has to go under. So if it's not to get someone over, Mike Messier, why even have it?
Well, that's a good point, and I agree with you, Angelo. And I think it was Raven that used to say in ECW, Paul Heyman's style of booking was one guy goes over, one guy gets over.
Gets over. Thank you.
Right. And he was referring to himself in Tommy Dreamer's feud, that Raven would typically go over and win the match, but Tommy Dreamer was getting more and more fans because people respected
and he got over.
Right.
Go ahead, Kelleher.
Well, I have a little thought about this that, maybe adds something to the conversation.
Sure.
You have to take into account what point these guys are in their careers too. Like
that's a very valid point. Absolutely.
You couldn't do those matches with young guys who are fresh on the scene. These are people like I've said before. There's generations that have not known a WrestleMania without the Undertaker in it.
Exactly.
So to have a match with Taker, it's something that people expect, right, wrong, or indifferent. And then the Cena, you talk about the Firefly Funhouse match. The thing I really loved about that is they told a whole story in one match, which was absolutely
exactly
amazing.
Right. And that's why I say, and I'll reiterate what I said, the three things you've got to do if you're going to do that kind of match. Number one, tell a story. Number two, hook people, get them involved. And number three, get somebody over.
But does Taker beating AJ Styles help either of them? I mean, I don't know. And then
but what it did was it established AJ as a credible person, a credible wrestler. B, it forteed his style that not only can he wrestle, he can roughhouse, he can break the rules, he can play by the rules, he can do all these different things because he's that adaptable. If you can hang with The Undertaker for 8 or 10 minutes, you're doing something pretty good.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Mike.
Go ahead,
Mike. Go ahead.
I saw it as AJ was really stepping into the Shawn Michaels spot from 10 or 12 years ago when they had those back-to-back WrestleMania matches, I think at 25 and 26. Undertaker works best with a guy that can fly for him, a guy that can sell for him. Undertaker's matches with Kane and Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Big Show were never as good as his matches with AJ Styles or Shawn Michaels.
You know what? I agree with you. Mike Kelleher.
Sure.
Do you think, or let me ask you this. In your opinion, can an AJ Styles foray into that Shawn Michaels category? Are you shaking your head? No.
Yeah, I don't.
What is it? You tell me from your perspective, why can't AJ slide into Shawn's spot?
He can make his own spot, but he'll never be Shawn Michaels. I'll just say that. I think that if you're talking about the role that Shawn Michaels played to a degree, yeah, but he won't do it as well as Shawn Michaels did it. And he, I think he's done his stock some disservice with his story arc or his character progression over the past year or two.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Anderson and Gallows thing.
Has that played out its course already, Mike?
No, it's still going. They were in the match. They were in the Boneyard match.
Yeah, but my point is, at this point, is it really necessary to even involve them?
Oh, I see. I thought you meant, okay. Should it be over? Yes. Are they going to keep it going? Yes. But
and that bothers me.
It bothers me too. Like, I don't look at AJ Styles as a legit threat when he has to have two thugs with him.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
You absolutely made my point. Messier, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, he had Ric Flair and he had Tully, Arn, Ole, Lex, Barry, Sid. How was that different? It's the same thing.
No.
How was it different?
You had those guys. Some of them were tag team champions, and then you had somebody else floating around, maybe as the TV champ or something like that. And then Rick was usually the heavyweight champ. They would all help each other, but it wasn't the same. It had a totally different feel. Like these two goons in Anderson and Gallows, they can't hold a candle to the threat that the Horsemen provided to the wrestling world. And it's just comical watching these three guys, AJ, Anderson, and Gallows, do their thing.
Well, now you mentioned the word there that Mike Messier has real strong feelings about.
Uh-oh.
The word comical. Mike Messier, comedy in wrestling. Why is it a bad thing?
It can be a bad thing when you've got Joey Ryan, when you've got Colt Cabana on his hands and knees on New Year's Eve kissing the outside of Joey Ryan's trunks on his crotch. That's no good for wrestling.
Now, is that comedy or is that just vulgar?
That was Colt Cabana making a statement that he didn't think people should be homophobic because of Lars Sullivan's tweets and stuff coming back to haunt him, and Lars Sullivan's gay porn past coming back to haunt him.
Yeah, so, and I get that, and I understand it. I really do. Honestly, I do. But we're talking about comedy, and to me, that's not funny.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Joey Ryan fancies himself. If you listen to him speak and you hear his interviews, he considers himself a serious wrestler.
Well, I don't.
So there goes the whole comedy argument.
I guess
when I'm talking about comedy, I'm talking about, like, I'll give you a point of reference. Okay, something Messier will certainly understand. The days of the midget wrestler.
Sure. Novelty match.
They were absolutely comedy spots, and they were put there for a reason. They were to bring the audience to a lighter moment usually after A, a tag team championship match, or B, after the heavyweight championship.
Well, our esteemed guest who was on the Wrestling with the Future podcast earlier this week, James J. Dillon, had quite a comedy spot when he was in women's underwear and garters in a match.
I think it was Steamboat, Manny Fernandez, and Dusty.
Hilarious.
Yeah, they pulled his pants down with Black Bart and Ron Bass. Was that it?
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
And that was a comedy spot. That was funny.
Comedy spot.
Well, he was also a manager.
Joey Ryan doing dick flips is not a comedy spot. I'm sorry.
Here's the thing, guys. Jim Cornette has often crucified a lot of these things, these supposed comedy spots, and people will take issue with Cornette and say, "Hey, didn't you wrestle a Ninja Turtle somewhere in Smoky Mountain?" And he did. God, right? He wrestled a guy in a Ninja Turtle outfit. But what Cornette will defend himself, he'll say that he was the manager. He was the goof. And J.J. Dillon being stripped and exposing a woman's garter on his legs, that's because he's the manager. He's the the guy taking the fall.
The pratfall, yes, exactly.
I found there to be comedy in the John Cena Bray Wyatt match.
I find that, Mikey, I find that interesting that you bring that up, because Cornette, who continuously, and now and probably always will, dump on comedy spots was responsible for some of the funniest moments in wrestling. And that's the ironic part, that he himself is really funny.
Well, he would get his head thrown into a cake and all types of stuff. And I think
That's, to me, that's hilarious stuff. I popped huge when I saw that.
right. And I think what the situation is that
Watching
everybody,
Jim Cornette take a table bump is hilarious.
right. Everybody's got a different definition of comedy. So for someone who thinks that Joey Ryan and his Dickplex or people wrestling invisible wrestlers, there are people that find that to be the funniest thing in the world. I particularly don't. But
I'm with you. I
right.
don't.
But I'll admit to this real quick. When the Ding Dongs first came out in 1989, I found there to be some humor in that. These were wrestlers with bells on their trunks, Mike.
Killer Kelleher is looking at you like, what the hell are the Ding Dongs? I want you to back the story up.
I didn't know if it was a Hostess-sponsored wrestling promotion.
The Ding Dongs.
No, listen to this. Very good reference, by the way, Kelleher. Messier, tell Kelleher what the hell the Ding Dongs were. You're going to love this one.
I believe it was.
And who came up with it?
I believe it was the pizza salesman, Jim Herd, who had the run of WCW for about 2 years from like 89 to 91. And he had all these crazy ideas. And one of them that actually went to print, that was, I believe, on the Clash of Champions 9 from the Fort Bragg, North Carolina, with all the Army guys in the audience, was that these two wrestlers, I think they were underfoots or something like that, a couple of guys went out in full body suits and masks, and they had little bells attached to their wrists, their elbows, their knee pads.
They literally had bells, hundreds of bells sewn onto their costume.
Right.
And when Mike Messier says the pizza salesman, I want to tell you, Jim Herd was the president of Pizza Hut.
I actually knew that.
Who was offered the opportunity. He should have said no, but he said yes because the money was too good. And he took over WCW. Knows nothing about wrestling. He went for the paycheck. They paid him millions of you hear what I'm saying? Millions of dollars. Millions and millions of dollars, yes. To do what, I don't know.
The Ding Dongs.
Come up with an idea like the Ding Dongs.
You know, here's the one that comes to my mind as far as comedy is concerned. Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Oh my God.
He was my favorite.
God bless him.
Him and Gorilla Monsoon.
The best.
Back and forth. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I love it.
Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon rivaled Abbott and Costello. And I'll just say, I'll put that out there. Gorilla Monsoon was quick and sharp, and Bobby was funny and sarcastic. And the two of them were a match made in wrestling heaven. They were the best.
I guess I got to ask a question for both of you guys is, something like, I call it a Cena apocalypse Cena, or It's a Wonderful Cena, or a Christmas Cena, this mini film that just happened at WrestleMania. But if you compare that to some of the stuff from 1985 on Primetime Wrestling, Fuji Vice, guys, Mean Gene Okerlund and Hulk Hogan making a protein shake in the kitchen on Primetime Wrestling, Nikolai Volkov singing the Russian national anthem, and Uncle Elmer's wedding. I mean, this is all WWF stuff. At the time, I was more into the NWA because you had, Ric Flair versus Mike Rotundo, or you had Brad Armstrong versus Jimmy Garvin, or Tully Blanchard versus Magnum TA. But in the WWF, this comedy stuff's been going on since at least 85, if not before.
Oh, my God. It's been going on for decades prior to that. But as I said before, and people should take note, the comedy spots were instituted for one reason. to bring the crowd down a little bit after a big match.
Yeah.
And it was usually a championship match. Then they brought him down. Then the match, right? Remember, this is all ties into wrestling psychology, which is like all but non-existent now. Then you had the comedy act, whether it was the male versus female, which was always comedy, the midget wrestlers, or some kind of special attraction match. Then after that, you would have another serious match. Perhaps maybe it was Captain Lou and Tony Altamori versus the Moondogs, or some team like that.
You think about going to a concert. A band doesn't want to play a set that goes like this. It's going to go up and then down, have your ballad, and then go back up.
Well, and you bring up a real good point. There's also something else in concerts. You've got the opening act.
Yeah.
Right? You've got the main headliner. And then the headliner's job, as in wrestling, as you just pointed out, take them up, level them off, drop them a little bit, and then when you end the show, what do you always do? You do your big hit. Boom. Through the roof. Okay? When you went to see Kiss, they ended every show with rock and roll all night and party every day.
Right. I have seen Kiss in concert, as a matter of fact.
When you went to see Elvis, he ended every show with Can't Help Falling in Love. It didn't matter who you went to see in a concert venue or some kind of, stage performance. They always ended on their hit. That's what wrestling does. Very much the same. Bring them up, bring them down, level them off, bring them up a little bit. It's a roller coaster, and that's what you're supposed to do. If you're doing it right, you take your fans on an emotional roller coaster ride. The problem, Mike Messier, is that there's no emotional investment. You and I have talked about this ad nauseum.
Right. Well,
and that's the one thing that we always bucked heads on with Jeff the Ref.
Jeff was very much a defender of the current WWE, and look, maybe as a tribute to Jeff the Ref, but I would say that one thing we haven't talked about tonight is the empty arena era, as I'm describing it, and this was the first.
Oh, Jeff would shit all over that.
well, but here's the thing, guys. I mean, I think for me, it's like this. Would we rather just be watching old matches? I mean, what if AEW, SmackDown, and Raw and WrestleMania, if we had nothing to watch, we wouldn't have anything to talk about. They could play, in theory, rerun matches. They could show us Royal Rumbles from 10 years ago. And, hey, guys, here was SummerSlam from 2006. But to me, the empty arena era, as I'm describing it, it is serving a purpose. It's maybe teaching these wrestlers some different levels to their performance, maybe showing people like Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley can have a great match. Seth Rollins and KO, Kevin Owens, can have a great match in an empty arena. But some of the talents struggled, and maybe it's a learning lesson.
Mike Messier, what it's teaching people above all is it's teaching them, because there's no audience, it's teaching them how to work without cueing each other.
Right.
They're having to go out and work with virtual silence, essentially, but they're making up for it by speaking louder so you can hear the referee. You can hear the trash talking between the opponents. And that, in some regard, is good, because you have to kill that deafening silence with something. Killer Kelleher, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
and
for it.
you just said something.
By the way, before you say that, I have to tell you, you have an absolutely amazing shirt on. I love that shirt.
Thank you. You can
Messier,
find
where is your shirt?
You gotta give me my size, buddy. I got my.
Oh, well, tell me what you need.
Yeah, 3X. Yeah, 3X, buddy.
I got 2X.
I know, but I got too much for the 2X. I gotta lose about 20 pounds
to get
back
one made
into it.
for you. Okay, I'll get one made for you. Okay,
Thank you.
I can do that. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No problem. So, the one thing I want to say is, and we talked about this on the roundtable for the preview of WrestleMania. Just like Messier said, we should really take this into perspective and actually be thankful that we have programming that is original, even if it's not 100% original in the case of WWE, because they are still showing some old matches on Raw and SmackDown.
True.
But hopefully that was just the lead up to WrestleMania and trying to tie some things in, as opposed to not being able to fill the time allotted. I do feel that they're doing a much better job. WWE kind of stumbled a little bit at first in the empty arena era. That's a great term.
Yeah.
AEW knocked it out of the park from the beginning. And then I think WWE has done a good job of responding and taking some corrective action without copying AEW. But
you brought up a good point, Mike. You brought up a really, really good point that I want you to expound on for me.
Okay.
AEW.
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you think they did a bang-up job right out of the chute?
Well,
what was different?
Well, they focused on the ring as opposed to the ring and the empty arena. They had heels on one side of the arena, faces on the other side, all around the ring, like the first row. And it was great. And guys were betting in the crowd, and there was interaction from different people in the telecast. It was great.
Yeah, and I think that when you got MJF walking through the crowd taking bets on matches, that's great.
That's pretty awesome. and then the other thing they did, this was a subtle one that I don't know if everybody caught. I caught it with Hangman Adam Page. They called him hand washing Adam Page on his little nameplate,
lower third
screen.
Yeah,
and that's the kind of thing that AEW can do. They have the creativity and the freedom to do, and that was great. And then, look, let's not gloss over the fact that they also had Matt Hardy and Brody Lee show up for the first time on that first episode. So, I mean, heck, that's tough to beat any day. But I'll just say this also: the job that WWE is doing is getting better. And the interesting thing that you said, Angelo, about the wrestlers being able to hear the ref and the trash talking from the other wrestlers and stuff, it's great. The one thing that I took exception with during WrestleMania, as far as that's concerned, is you could hear the announcers when the wrestlers were doing stuff in the ring. Like there was I forgot what match it was. It was Sunday. It might have been the Edge and Orton match before it left the ring, or it was somebody. But regardless, it was like somebody was interfering, and then so Michael Cole is saying, "Oh, he's interfering," and then the ref has to act like they can't hear what's going on.
Right.
That's the one thing.
I actually caught that, Mike. So I'm glad you pointed it out.
But other than that, like I have loved hearing there was a spot where.
But given the circumstances, though, I mean,
I give it a pass. It's fine.
Exactly.
I'm just saying,
it's forgivable. Absolutely.
There was another spot where I think Kevin Owens was in the ring, maybe with the Street Profits or somebody, and I think it was Seth and maybe I don't know, whoever. I don't remember who it was, but somebody said, "Can we say something?" And then whoever was in the ring said, "No." And you would never hear that normally, but it's beautiful to hear this great trash talking and banter back and forth. I love it.
Yeah. Messier.
I've enjoyed the empty arena era more than the previous era of the last 2 years, to be honest with you.
Well, and I think one of the reasons I agree with that, and it may surprise you that I actually don't mind the empty arena matches. They're kind of growing on me. To be perfectly honest. I think one of the reasons they're growing on me is that, to your point, Mike, and to your point, Mike Messier.
Can you please call me Killer?
Okay.
Thank you.
To your point, Kelleher. I got to get used to that, Kelleher. You look like a puppy dog. Let's be honest. But the point I'm trying to make is it's forcing them, the WWE, on all levels to be more creative.
Right.
To find different ways to be creative. You know, you said it from the outset. AEW went right in to the ring, and they had people, babies on one side, heels on the other. They had, spectator interaction, for lack of a better term. Okay? And, the whole bet taking bit, that element there, I would call that a comedy bit. And it worked, especially with MJF, because he's as funny as shit. The guy, I mean, he don't have to do anything, and you love him and you hate him all at the same time.
Well, Don't forget, they also had Jericho doing commentary, which you can't go wrong with.
No. How do you go wrong with Chris Jericho doing anything? But I think that the WWE is finding ways now to be more creative. I think they're also finding ways to be more current. The biggest, I don't want to say, I don't want to use the word drawback because it's really not a drawback, but the biggest criticism, I'll use that word. The biggest criticism for the longest time, and Mike Messier, you know it, is that the WWE was in a bubble.
Right.
And they couldn't get out of that bubble. They were stuck in this, for lack of a better term, what Vince Russo calls the wrestling bubble.
Right.
Okay. And they couldn't break that. I think the empty arena era is forcing them. It's forcing their hand. They have to break out of it. They have no audience now.
Yeah. And
there are people at home now watching wrestling who never watched wrestling before. Why? Because it's the only thing on. Go figure. Wrestling is going to save us from the coronavirus.
Well, look, I mean, and ironically enough, in China, the same word for opportunity is the same word for crisis, isn't it? I learned that from Maggie Simpson. Yes. So, therefore, this crisis that we're all experiencing with the coronavirus gives the WWE and AEW an opportunity to, and the other wrestling groups as well, whether it's NWA, Impact, they all have this opportunity now to go into some different places. And for me, what was successful was both the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse.
Absolutely.
I found them to both be a creative success. I found the rest of the WrestleMania to be a 7 or 8, with 10 being the highest score. I'll be nice and I'll give it an 8. But some matches worked better than others. And the matches that seemed to work were the ones like Charlotte versus Rhea, where it seemed like these two people would really fight each other if there was an audience or not.
Sure.
When you have other acts or other matches, like, for instance, the Street Profits or Nikki Cross, wrestlers, WWE sports entertainers that seem to be more based on the crowd reaction, then that's when they struggle. But when it's Charlotte Flair, who legitimately seemed to want this NXT women's title, and Rhea Ripley, who legitimately seemed to want to hold on or to establish herself to be able to beat Charlotte at WrestleMania, then I could get sold on it, and I did get sold on it.
I'll say this, like, from my perspective, I thought night 1 of WrestleMania was subpar, including the Boneyard match. but night 2 more than made up for it.
And that seems to be the consensus of just about everybody you talk to.
Well, I mean, you look at the.
But not to interrupt you, Mike, but the ironic thing, it's funny how we were talking about concerts before, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the opening act and then the main event, right? Here's the funny thing. Here's the ironic twist to this whole thing. Had they done the entire show just the way it was done in one night, everybody would be raving that WrestleMania was a stellar success. But the fact that you broke it up into 2 nights, you built people up, and then what did you do? You went from here, boom, you dropped them.
I mean, I could see that to a point. I think they definitely added more matches than you would have had in a one-night WrestleMania. But overall, I think that night 2 could have stood alone as a Sunday, one-day WrestleMania and
You're
been
probably right.
more than good. I mean, like the Miz and Morrison, the tag team match, like that whole thing, I didn't know what had happened, and apparently Miz was sick or something, and
we're testing him. He was under supervision.
So they made it into a singles match, and like that whole thing. I don't know, that was really awkward, but I loved all of the women's matches. I thought were great, and then the Firefly Funhouse match. As much as And Jeff is smiling really big right now because I do not like Bray Wyatt at all. But, I really liked what they did with that, and seeing some of those little flashbacks to Saturday Night Main Event and some of the other little things they did, like it just brought back memories that I hadn't thought of in years.
Well, Mike Messier, final thoughts before I have to let you go.
Well, I just thank you for having me again, Angelo, and good to see you again, Mike. And I think it was just once again, thanks to all the healthcare workers and people working in the pharmacies, the drugstores, the grocery stores, the gas stations. Even places like Office Depot and stuff like that are still open. So for the people putting their time in and doing their work, thank you, because just going to a store for 10 minutes is a good thing these days. But
absolutely.
As far as the rest,
Mike Messier, the next time I will see you will be on April the 14th, and we will be interviewing Karen McDaniel.
Wahoo McDaniel's
wife. Yes.
Well, the funny thing is, I think I met her a long time ago because I bought a wrestling mask from Wahoo McDaniel for $5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we'll get together on the 14th to talk to Mrs. McDaniel.
Sounds good.
I will let you go tonight, Mike. So thank you for joining us. Go enjoy your dinner.
Thanks, everybody.
You got it, my friend. Take care. Have a good night, Mikey.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
By the way, Angelo, I want to say one thing. You say I look like a puppy dog, even though I'm Killer Kelleher. But I'll just say this. Maybe I
have to laugh when you say killer.
Maybe I kill people with my kindness.
Oh, you found a way to redeem yourself. Look at you. Get the fuck out of here. Oh, Jesus. Well, let's talk about the show, the Refs Roundtable. It's getting a lot of good reviews. Oh. People love the subject matter. They like to pick them. Oh. And that's a favorite of mine, too, by the way. I like to pick them. So if people are just watching this for the first time, tell everybody what Pick'em is.
Well, what we do is when there's a big pay-per-view, we go through the whole card, and each person picks who they think is going to win the match. And it started off with me and Jeff the Ref, and we did the NXT TakeOver pay-per-view it was about 2 months ago now. Mm-hmm. And that was the only one we got in before he passed away. But we had plans to do this for all the big matches, and we were really looking forward to Refamania. He didn't know I came up with Refamania posthumously, but I would.
Well, that's our tribute to the ref. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I said he will always be a part of the show, and he absolutely will.
And God bless you for it. I mean, that's awesome. And so the pick'em, like here's the sheet for the pick'em, and I kept.
Oh, you got the matches and everything wrote down, and the winners and losers. Oh, no shit.
So
well, you did put some science into this.
Absolutely. So we went through the whole card, and please go listen to that episode. It was a fun episode.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's up on our Facebook right now. It's up on the Wrestling with the Future site. It's also up on Podbean, iHeart, iTunes Radio, Podbay, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play. As Jeff the ref would say, the fillings in your teeth. It's everywhere. You can find that episode everywhere. Well, so now let's talk about some of the people coming up on the show, Mike.
Yeah, let's do it.
We've got our friend returning, the Metal Maniac, Jeff Miller. Yeah. Metal will be back. He's actually joining us. I think he's supposed to be here tomorrow.
Oh, really?
Yeah, tomorrow night, actually.
Oh, boy.
Is he having a shirt on heard me or no? Say again?
Shirt or no shirt?
No, this time a shirt, and this time he's going... For those listening, if you don't know what we're talking about, just check out the episode with the Metal Maniac. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You don't need to say any more.
Nope.
He's a character. I will tell you, Jeff Miller, the Metal Maniac, is a character. Of course, you heard me mention Karen McDaniel, Wahoo McDaniel's wife, will be with me on the 14th. That'll be myself and Mike Messier. You'll be recording an episode of the Roundtable that week, and we have Nikita Brezhnikov coming on. Now, this will be your first time meeting Nikita, so do some research on Nikita. The last time Nikita was on was actually 2 days before Jeff passed. And that was the last episode that Jeff ever recorded with me. Wow. And that's a real special episode for me. And then that's on April the 16th. Now, we got a big one coming up.
Oh, yeah.
You and I are going to be talking to Tony Villano. He is the curator and head of the International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. Also called the IPHWF.
I love it.
Then, returning for his second appearance on April 23rd is J.J. Maguire, the Music Man from WWE. He wrote all that great music with Jimmy, the Mouth of the South Heart.
Mm-hmm.
And May, we're going to start off May with a bang, because in 1 week, I got two big ones.
Yeah.
Two big ones. May 5th, Magnum TA.
Woo!
Tell me what you remember about Magnum TA.
Well, I grew up in Virginia Beach, and a certain wrestler by the name of Magnum TA was from Virginia Beach. And that was like insane to me to think there is a real professional wrestler somewhere
in your town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It blew my mind. I had a friend, this girl, who ended up breaking my heart once. But we were just friends growing up, like 10 years old, 12 years old. And her mom had a restaurant, and Magnum TA came into that restaurant and had lunch one day.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Like, it blew my mind.
Did you get to meet him?
No, I just found out afterwards. But
oh, wow.
I'm just saying, like, to think, like, it's kind of like thinking they're superheroes. Like, oh, they eat dinner somewhere? They eat lunch? What?
Yeah, wait. The first time I ever found out that Bruno, ate dinner, I was like, he eats food? Really? I thought he was like Superman that just like, chomped on metal.
That's right.
And then, Magnum TA on May 5th. So then last night, I got to tell you, I had a very interesting conversation with Lanny Poffo.
Okay.
Lanny Poffo will be joining us on May the 7th.
Leapin' Lanny.
Leapin' Lanny, the genius, the poet laureate of wrestling.
Indeed.
And we're going to talk to him about everything Lanny Poffo.
And I
am not going to talk to him. Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk to him about Macho Man.
I get it.
And I'm not going to talk to him about Elizabeth or Lex Luger.
Okay.
That's been done ad nauseum. And I'm sure he's sick to death of answering questions about his brother. I want to talk to Lanny about Lanny.
Absolutely.
I want to show
about Lanny. I'm going to try and dig it up before the episode.
Oh, you have a photo of you and Lanny?
No, I just have something to tie into Lanny.
Oh, okay. It doesn't have anything to do with Arnold Palmer or golfing. I'm sorry.
Oh, our connection's going, Angelo.
Oh, shit. We needed that laugh. That was funny. That's all good.
Hey, it went right over y'all's heads. That's okay.
But, you know, somehow or another, though, if you could tie Arnold Palmer to Lanny Poffo,
I'm working on it.
It wouldn't surprise me. No, don't work on it. Oh, my God. And we also have, we got a big one coming up. We've got a refs roundtable on May, I believe, later in May on the 21st. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But we've got Flying Brian Pillman Jr. coming on twice in May. May 12th and May 26th. Tell me about what do you know about Brian Jr.? Did you ever watch his dad wrestle?
Oh, man, I watched his dad a lot. He was a real big baby face back in the day. I mean,
did you know his father as a wrestler before the so-called loose cannon days?
What do you mean by I don't know that term, loose cannon?
Okay, they used to call Brian Pillman the loose cannon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Check it out. Check it out. Yeah, he was a heel. He was part of the Hart Foundation.
Oh, really?
You got to do your research, brother. You got a lot of homework to do.
Yeah, I only remember from what I actually remember watching on TV. He was always Flying Brian Pillman, the blonde-haired, blue tight.
Let me tell you something. After that, he went 100% heel, all black, everything black.
Wow.
He even grew out his beard and had it all scruffy face, but he still looked good.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, like, he was
kind of like us, like as hard as we try to be ugly by covering our faces up with beards, we still look good.
Exactly.
In fact, we look better. But check it out. I want you to do your homework. Here's what I want you to do. Go on to YouTube and type in.
What's YouTube?
Smack you. Go on and search Brian Pillman loose cannon.
All right.
Okay, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Then we've got it's a Brian Jr. on the 12th.
Angelo, who did Brian Pillman feud with when he was a face?
Oh God.
Was he like Barry Windham, and was he fighting with like Barry Windham and?
Oh God, sure, yeah.
I'm trying to remember because he was. I know there was a time when he was going up against some of the guys in the Horsemen, and then anyway, I don't want to throw the train off the tracks here. I just couldn't remember.
No, I'll tell you right now, because that's a really good question.
You know, Angela, I've got to say, this is the third time today you have complimented me by saying that's a really good point or that's a really good question.
Well, it is. It's true. Here you go. Here you go. Yeah. Let's see. Who did he feud with? Wow. Okay, here you go. Started his career in '89. Okay, here we go. He fought against Tom Zink, Brad Armstrong, Jushin Thunder Liger, Ricky Morton, Scotty Flamingo. He turned heel in '92.
Wait, he was fighting Ricky Morton as a face?
What says?
I wonder if Ricky Morton was a heel.
For a cup of coffee, he was.
Okay.
Says frustrated by Brad Armstrong's knee injury and vacating the WCW light heavyweight title, he was scheduled to wrestle Armstrong at Clash of the Champions and formed a tag team with Barry Windham, gunning for the NWA championship held by Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas.
All right.
So, yeah, I mean, that was, you want to check that out because there's a lot. There's a lot there. Pillman wrestled a long time and, and was over in WCW and WWF.
Absolutely.
Now, something of interest to both of us, wrestling training schools. We are going to have the owner of the very first wrestling training school publicly. And that's the Monster Factory, the world famous Monster Factory that was founded by a guy I knew very well. He was a dear friend of mine, rest in peace. His name was Pretty Boy Larry Sharp. You remember that name? No?
No.
You're young, man. You got homework to do.
I just remember like a lot of the guys that said like there was Gorgeous George and there was a lot of guys who said they were really pretty that really weren't. Was your buddy good
Larry?
looking? Yeah.
He had a baby face, yeah.
Okay.
But he was a prick. I'm kidding.
Okay.
No, he was a nice guy. He was a really nice guy.
Angela, what are you gonna say about if I were to pass away, what kind of smack talk are you gonna write on my tombstone?
That he was a prick? No. No, I'm going to say he was a wonderful man who knew shit about wrestling and loved Arnold Palmer. I'm kidding.
It's all good.
Oh, jeez. I forgot, though, that you actually worked as a golf pro.
Yeah.
So I guess in that field, Arnold Palmer is, he is he's gone now, right? Yeah, but he was a legend in golf. Oh, my God.
I mean, in fairness, he was a legend outside of golf. But let's not go down this road.
Yeah, but no, let's talk about that. I mean, I knew who Arnold Palmer was, but not from golf. I knew who he was because of the television show The Munsters.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Because he appeared on the Munsters. That's how I knew who he was. But I'll tell you who else. You're talking about golf. Another name that transcends the golf course, Lee Trevino. It's another guy.
The only difference is, I think a lot of younger people don't know who Lee Trevino is. But people know Arnie and Jack Nicklaus. But Lee Trevino, amazing. One of the best of all time.
Let's make the analogy. In the world of golf, you can say names like Arnie and Jack, and they know who you're talking about.
Tiger.
Just like in wrestling, you don't even have to say San Martino. You say Bruno.
Yeah.
You don't have to say Steamboat. You don't have to say Steamboat. You just say Ricky. And when you're talking about Flair, it's just Rick or Flair.
Or Nate,
yeah.
Or how about Hulk?
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, I mean, there are names that one names and that describes in the realm of wrestling. Oh my God, there's a handful of guys who transcended professional wrestling. Bruno, Hulk, Superstar, Rock. A lot of people Well, probably now they know his name is Dwayne Johnson, but few people would be hard pressed to even know his name was Dwayne. You know, just call him The Rock.
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. The Rock. You know?
Absolutely.
On May the 19th, we're going to have a conversation with a wrestling legend, a guy who goes back about 40 years in wrestling. He was a trainer, a manager. He owned a school, a promotion. He worked for every major federation. His name is Doc Diamond.
Mm.
And Doc will be with us and talk about his illustrious career. He's also a guy I've known for a long time, about 30 years. And Doc's a really, really interesting cat. He's a funny, funny guy. And he likes to curse. He likes to cuss a lot.
Okay. He'll fit in
So
well.
I might have to put like an adult warning on that show. Got to put up that famous disclaimer, under 18, use discretion.
Yeah.
But now let's talk about May 21st, because we're going to do a real interesting roundtable.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the death of Dino Bravo.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're doing that story on Dark Side of the Ring, but we had already planned on this, so we're going to do it anyway. Just like with the episode we did on Chris Benoit.
Benoit, yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, we got some really amazing reviews on that show.
Awesome.
It's funny. The same people that dumped on us beforehand complimented us afterwards for doing such a fair job.
So they were before the episode. They were talking smack and
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like wrestling fans do.
Yeah, I've heard that a time or two.
Yeah, but you know what happens? Because look, Mike, let's be honest. Everybody's brave behind the keyboard.
Well, and let's also remember this: we were leading them down, like their minds were going down one path, and we totally switched it.
Well, we swerved them.
Yeah.
And that's why they looked at the show, probably out of morbid curiosity, and went, hey, this is pretty good.
Bruiser Brody's wife was another one.
Exactly. And the thing that we did with Mrs. Goodish, or a.k.a. Mrs. Bruiser Brody, was that we never talked to Barbara once about how her husband died. She mentioned one time in the conversation, she called it the incident.
Yeah, just one little.
And that was and glossed right over. And I knew what she meant, and everybody else did too. You knew, of course. And of course,
so
Mike
Messier. I got to give you a little credit there, because
yes, sir.
It's like it would have been easy picking, like cherry picking, to just try and talk about circumstances around Bruiser Brody's passing and all that, but to go a different route and to say, let's focus on the man, his life, as opposed to the moment of his death and the things surrounding.
Exactly, Mike, and that's a very good point. And what I did not want to do is I did not want to drudge up painful memories for her.
Absolutely.
Oh, forget, she's got a son now that's like almost 40.
Yeah.
Right? And I thought it was about 32, but apparently he's, a few years older than I thought. Because it's been, many years since Brody, 32 years since Brody passed. And he was 7 at the time. So, yeah, he's almost 40 now.
Yeah. Well, like this, too. We're lucky to get Mrs. Goodish on the show. And
yeah, very fortunate.
To earn that kind of trust with her. It's so important. And I just, it's one of those things. I'm so glad we didn't go the easy route and just take the same path that had been trudged before.
And that's a point, Mike, that you bring up. That's a very, very important point, and thank you for bringing it up. That subject matter has been done ad nauseum.
Absolutely.
Talking about you know, the death of Bruiser Brody, the murder of, yes, we all know he was murdered. We all know how he died. There was a whole locker room full of wrestlers there who stood around and did nothing. We all know that she doesn't need to be reminded of that. And
it's a class move. That's what it is.
Yeah, and you know something else too. If anybody has a right to hate the wrestling business, she does. You know, she's got every right to like want to remove herself from the wrestling business.
Yeah.
But she's such a wonderful, wonderful woman, and she's a strong lady too, and a good mom. But we're going to talk about the death of Dino Bravo.
Okay.
That's got mafia hit written all over it.
Oh.
And we're going to talk about his connections to the mob, the illegal activity he was doing, why his career in the WWE was short-lived.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot there. Oh my God, we're going to go crazy with that one. And then, and that'll be on May 21st. And then again, returning on May 26th is Flying Brian Pillman Jr. So we're going to talk to him. And by the way, his father's birthday is May the 22nd. So he's going to be here before his dad's birthday and after his father's birthday.
Yep.
So, and Flying Brian Pillman Jr. is a wonderful kid. I got to meet him, spoke to him for a while when he was here in New Jersey. In fact, that's where I hooked up with J.J. Dillon, and J.J. was a great guy, and he remembered me promising him pizza, popcorn, and candy. And
month supply, thank you.
Yeah, month supply, thank you. Yes, a month's supply, by the way. And yeah, and I had every intention of doing that. And I'm going to send him a T-shirt.
Are you going to deliver the pizzas personally, or what?
Oh, fuck no.
I don't know.
That's a long drive. He lives in Delaware, brother.
Oh, come on.
It's about 30 minutes. Not too bad.
Yeah.
He lives in Smyrna, Delaware. But that's what we've got coming up in the month of May.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to leave it at that because we got a whole nother ball game starting in June. We're going to change up some stuff. We're adding a new show. We're going to add a new show. I'm not going to tip the hat on this episode. We're going to unveil it on another episode. I'll give you a heads up privately. I'll tell you what that's all about. But we've got a lot going on. So when can people expect the next edition installment? This will be episode 8 coming up of the Refs Roundtable. So when can people expect episode 8?
I'm talking to Levi and Chris, who were on the Pick'em episode, because we want to go over our picks and, obviously revisit that. So we're hoping to record it tomorrow, but either tomorrow or Saturday, we'll get it in.
Okay.
And then we'll get back to our regularly scheduled program of weekly news and updates.
Super. Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah.
Well, for Mike Kelleher, Killer Mike Kelleher. I like that. Okay. Maybe it'll grow on me. Okay. You're killing me with the killer stuff. You can find us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Podbean, Podbay, YouTube, Twitch TV, Daily Motion, the fillings in your teeth. This one's for the ref, always for the ref. For Mike Killer Kelleher, I'm Psychic Medium Angelo. Thanks for stopping by. Join us again. Happy wrestling, everybody. Bye-bye.